today by two of the top competitors in the country. Why don't you two go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Elizabeth Grant, president of Stanford's mock trial program. Been there for 4 years, still loving it.
I'm Bennett. I compete for Tufts. I'm also the president. It's a good time.
Also a friend of the show, Bennett. I think you're the first repeat guest on the show. You were our first guest, and here you are back on just under a year later. How does it feel to be back on the show?
It is an incredible honor. I am really glad to be back.
So some of you may be wondering why I'm sitting here with Liz and Bennett, and the reason is this is the official announcement. Liz and Bennett are going to be the first two competitors admitted and selected for our 2022 trial by combat. I'll start with Liz. Liz, how do you feel to be back?
I think I was blown away enough to have been invited the first year and just completely honored and awestruck by the entire thing. I think it's going to be absolutely incredible and stunning to be back for a second year. And I'm just really excited. It's nice to be back at a tournament that you're familiar with and where, you know, you see familiar and friendly faces like Bennett. So I'm thrilled, but I'm sure we all will be.
Bennett, you were our runner-up last year. Are you concerned that there's going to be a target on your back?
I mean, yeah, I don't know. The thing is, it's such a I have no expectation of doing as well again. Like obviously I'd love to, but it's such just everyone is so good every year, and there's so much that's up to chance that I'm just happy to be going back at all. It's just so fun. Like it's like horrible while you're going through it, but it's so much fun. And just the idea that, you know, it's like we all love doing this thing and we all want to keep doing it. And the idea that you can get 4 more rounds in or 2 more rounds in or whatever after your career has theoretically ended is just like, it's just nice. It's just going to be fun to be back.
And congratulations to your team who recently earned a bid to ORCs. Congratulations on that. Tell us how the regional went.
It was good. Yeah, it was a nail biter for sure. We had a good split after a really good round with Wesley and C. They were fantastic. They got a ballot off us, and so that sort of put the pressure on for the rest of the weekend. But we pulled through. It was a good time.
What was it like adjusting from in person for the majority of the year back to Zoom?
That's a good question. It was not too bad because we had done the virtual all of last year. The big adjustment for us was that we had this building that we would do all the trials in last year, and they turned all of the rooms where we would compete into storage rooms or offices. So we had to find a new spot to go. So that was annoying. But other than that, it was a fine transition. I mean, we like in person better. I think we do play better as a team in person, but we're used to the virtual format, so it was easy to convert.
Liz, your team is prepping for your regional this weekend. What's it been like for you guys transitioning from at least some in-person competition to virtual, and how's prep going?
Yeah, I think California has been a lot tighter on in-person competition than on some other areas in the country. So we've actually been virtual for the vast majority of the invitational season. I think we only did 1 in-person competition so far this year. So I think the adjustment for us, you know, knock on wood, if we get teams out of regionals, which I hope that we will, I think the bigger adjustment is going to be shifting back to in-person, because we've been virtual now for 1.5 years, almost 2 years. So we're fairly used to it. We feel good about it. Yeah.
One of the big differences this year between law school mock trial and college mock trial is the college tournaments were really bold in the fall and in the spring. And deciding that they were going to go in person for a lot, or I'd say the majority of the college tournaments, whereas almost all of the law school tournaments were virtual. What do you, as two of the two more respected people in our community, what do the two of you think about AMTA's decision to go in person for ORCs and nationals?
I think that as a senior class, people like Bennett and myself long for the days where we used to be able to do in-person competition and mingle with our fellow competitors more. And there's a big piece of the AMTA community who's not gotten to experience that yet. And you get little bits and pieces of it from virtual competition, but I'm really excited. I think everyone in the community kind of wants to be back in person and together as soon as it's safe and feasible to do so. So I'm thrilled. I'm excited. I know everything's still up in the air, but I really respect how AMTA has sort of worked to navigate all of the things in the country right now that are changing on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. So, at the end of the day, you got to do what you got to do. But I think, we're all very excited that hopefully we'll be able to see some people in person again pretty soon.
Bennett, do you think it was a good decision?
I do. I agree with what Liz said. I mean, I feel very grateful for Zoom mock trial in the sense that like we got to do the thing we like to do for the year and a half, where a lot of other people were not able to do the things that brought them joy and like the activities that they did. But Liz is right. It is not the same activity. Like it is fundamentally a different thing than standing in a courtroom, sitting next to someone, getting an elbow on an objection, stepping into that well. It's a totally different feeling. And I just as a senior, I'm so happy that I get to do it one more time in person. And I think AMTA's handled it well. I think AMTA can even do more. There were tournaments happening in January at the height of the wave of cases in the US where there was no COVID transmission because there were booster mandates, there were KN95 or N95 mask mandates, and there was no transmission. I mean, I know AMTA is limited in what it is able to do as an organization that manages a lot of different things, but like there's a way to do this safely. And I think some of those measures could really help.
Bennett, I understand that you were a witness in a law school regional a week or two ago. Tell us about that. How'd you like it?
It was fun. It was very unexpected. Like it was not what I was expecting. The trial took forever. Like, are there no time limits on these things? Like I was there for like 3.5 hours.
Oh, there are time limits.
Well, I don't know. It took forever. I had the great pleasure of getting to watch Jonathan Woodward witness in the trial with me. He was excellent. Just a fantastic police officer witness. It was a good time. I was the defendant. I was on the stand for like 5-minute direct, 5-minute cross. I said I didn't do it. It was a nice time.
I want to shift to something a little bit more serious now. Liz, your Stanford team, and I'd say the trial act community at large, suffered a pretty big loss very recently in Thom Scher. He was a friend of mine and a friend to a lot of people in our community and elsewhere. How's the team doing?
I think it's always difficult to lose someone you love. Losing someone who is additionally a pillar of the community you've dedicated the vast majority of your young life to is incredibly difficult. I think, as with any major source of grief, we are going through it the best that we can, trying to honor him and his legacy the best that we can. And I feel very fortunate to be surrounded by a team so compassionate, so loving, so willing to be able to support one another through it, that I think, none of us would ever leave this activity. And it's just such a relief and such a joy to be able to continue it with the people who were here and who are really understanding about it.
Yeah, it's when you think about the amount of students that he worked with at the high school level, at the college level, it's just so many people that you realize knew him and that he made an impact on. I remember it was my last competition of law school ever before Top Gun, and it was the last round actually that I ever did before Top Gun. This guy just appears in the back of the courtroom, and after the round's over, he introduces himself and says we were awesome and that he came to Texas to watch because Justin was our coach, Justin Bernstein, and it was Tom. And it was one of the worst days of my mock trial career because it was my last competition ever. We lost that round. We weren't going to advance, but I got to hang out with Tom for the rest of the weekend because we weren't competing, and I got to really know him really well, and we were really good friends after that. And what just an amazing person, smart person, such a loving, caring person, really cared about his students and the people that were important to him. And he's going to obviously be missed a lot by a lot of people, but I think the things that he taught and all the things that were important to him are going to live on in people like you and some of his other students. And I'm glad to hear that your team is doing well. one of the things that we're kicking around right now, Justin and I, is whether we're going to be in person for trial by combat, online for trial by combat. In Los Angeles, in Philadelphia, we're still kind of figuring out what this is going to look like day to day. So I think the big thing that people want to know that are watching this is, Bennett, if the competition is in person, will you be bringing the cabinets with you to Philadelphia or Los Angeles?
This is a good question. IKEA makes a smaller unit of the cabinets. So theoretically, it's possible. But I think that the honest answer is no, but maybe we'll come up with something. I mean, unless you put rules in place to stop me, like we'll have something crazy for you.
Another question for you. I don't think you actually knew this, Ben, and this was something I wanted to ask you when you were on the show initially, and I just forgot. And luckily, I have another bite at the apple here. I don't know that you know this, but Justin Bernstein's middle name is actually Bennett.
Wow.
Yeah. How much do you think that had to do with you being in the final? And do you think that gives you an advantage if we're competing in Los Angeles?
I mean, listen, like you guys don't show us all the stuff with the ballots. Like we only get that spreadsheet with like a small, like a tiny amount of numbers. So he could have been pulling the strings for his middle name buddy. I mean, that it's definitely possible. It could help this year too. I mean, yeah,
there really aren't that many famous Bennetts out there. I mean, I really can't think of any other than you might be the most famous one. After what
I hope that's not true. That would be upsetting.
Liz, this is going to be your second time at Trial by Combat, and you are no stranger to the one-on-one competition. You are a Gladiator alum, is that right?
Yeah, and I have coached Gladiator a couple of times now, thankfully.
You are absolutely no stranger to the one-on-one format, and this is your second time competing at Trial by Combat. You did really well last year. How are you going to prepare differently this year, if at all?
That's a good question. I don't know that at this stage of the game I've thought through all of the details yet. I may have to steal Bennett's cabinet idea and see what we can do about that. I don't know. I think it's really going to depend a lot on whether it's in person or virtual. I think a lot of the planning process and how you prep for those different tournaments is dependent on, the format. So I think as we discover more details, I'm going to feel more confident in laying a game plan, but I don't know. We spend a lot of time obviously crafting the content and not so much on performance stuff, just because it's a 24-hour timeline. I mean, you barely have time to sleep, let alone to, micromanage what position your hands are going to be in at every second of the tournament. So I don't know. I don't know that much will change. But we'll see. We'll see as we go.
Bennett, you were in second last year, but second's not first. No points for second place at this tournament.
That is true. Somebody said that in the comments. It's funny. So I don't think this was a problem for Liz last year because of Pacific time, but the timetable is different for in-person versus online for me. Like I was getting the case at noon, and then I would go to like 2 and then go to sleep. But if we can get the case at 9:30 or something in the morning, that opens up like a whole new world of how exactly to structure the day. So I'm hoping we can get to sleep earlier. I know like if it's in person, I'm going to need to properly memorize much better than I did when I had the ability to be sort of reading at sort of sometimes like checking back to the script. So I think some memory training, definitely, just to polish up memorization. I don't know. We'll do a scrimmage or 2 again. It's just important to get back into the workflow of how to do short prep. Are we still doing second chairs? Is that is that going away if it's in person? Like what's it? Sorry to put you on the spot. What is the deal with that?
We'll make the official announcement on the show. There is going to be a second chair this year, regardless of the format.
Okay. Awesome.
That is a change that we are going to make to this year's tournament, whether assuming it's in person.
Awesome. Yeah, I think like Liz, my prep will not change very much. It's just, yeah.
Well, hang on a second, Bennett. If you're going to ask me the question, now you have to announce publicly who your second chair is going to be.
Announce publicly who my second chair is going to be right now?
Liz doesn't have to because she didn't ask the question. But okay. You're going to have to tell us.
It'll almost certainly be Margaret Beglin. She's a competitor on Tufts. She opens for our defense right now. She's fantastic. It'll be her.
Yeah, I saw her compete in a scrimmage recently, and I texted Bennett after the scrimmage and said that she is fantastic. I was blown away by her. And then she immediately won an award at the regional, and now she's going to trial by combat as a second chair. Like, was it because of my text? Did she
Honestly,
did she owe it all to me?
possible.
Liz, recently you wrote an open letter about sexual harassment. Obviously, I think a lot of people, including me, thought that was brave and really important. I'd imagine you've gotten a lot of reaction from that letter since. What's the reaction been like?
Overwhelmingly positive. I think it's something that a lot of people in the community have wanted to be voiced a lot in the last couple of years. And I think that I've been very fortunate to, get pieces of personal stories from individuals since the letter release. That's just incredibly devastating sometimes, fulfilling to hear. And I think that overwhelmingly, we need a support system in this community. I think that one step towards that is having conversations about what is going on and how we can develop a support system. I've been really lucky to have the support of incredible programs like Bennett's and incredible individuals like Sydney Gaskins to sort of help me along the way. But the reaction has been great. I am very thankful to be in a community where all of us agree that enough is enough, and enough was probably enough 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And so it feels like everyone is very, very ready to do something about it, which is just absolutely lucky as all heck for me.
Last question, and I'm going to put you guys on the spot, and you have to answer it. And before I ask the question, I'm going to give you what the ground rules are here. You have to answer the question with one answer, one name. Okay. You can't say each other, and you can't say, well, there's a lot of good people. It's going to be really tough. Everyone's so good. It's like really, everyone's amazing. No, none of that on the show. We tell it like it is. So each of you has to predict who's going to win Trial by Combat 2022. You can only say one name. So I'll give you 15 seconds to think about it. And Bennett, since you made me break the news about something about the tournament that I wasn't prepared to on the show, you get to go first.
Okay, I got mine.
Let's hear it.
Travis Harper, Harvard.
Wow. Interesting pick. Why Travis?
He's just really, really good. He's fantastic. Every time we play them, he's freaking great. He's done this a bunch of times. This will be his second year and he's only a junior. He's just, especially in person, I don't know, like I like you've probably seen him compete on Zoom. I don't know if you've seen him compete in person. He's just fabulous in person. Really, really strong.
I'll buy Liz a little time here. I actually did see Travis in person in 2019 at Gladiator. I was in California and I watched Travis compete in person as a high schooler, and he was really good as a high schooler. That was 3 years ago. So I would imagine that he is going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
I have a good feeling that he may or may not be one of the next people we announce. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see about that. But that is a really, really good pick, Bennett. You redeemed yourself. Liz, you had about 2 minutes to think about that, so I expect this to be a really good answer.
Yeah, unfortunately it's the same answer as Bennett.
Oh man,
definitely Travis.
Wow, I should have said you couldn't pick the same person. I'll have to do that for the next episode. Why Travis?
I hit Travis last year at TBC, and I just know what that guy can do, man. I mean, they've got such a powerhouse of skill that is incredible. And I don't know, I didn't want to face Travis last year. And now that he's had an additional year of season to go on and prep to have, I definitely don't want to have to hit them again. But it is what it is.
Well, congratulations to both of you on being selected. It's obviously incredibly well-deserved. I'm very excited to see you guys. Hopefully in either Philadelphia or Los Angeles instead of on the Zoom in these Zoom boxes like I've been watching you all for the last couple of years. And I'm super, super pumped for Trial by Combat 2022. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Phil. This was great.
I'm joined today by two of the, I think, most requested guests to be on the show. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Hey guys, Daniel Stern, Yale University class of 2016, was on 4 teams that went to the national championship tournament. Honorable mentions, my freshman and sophomore years of college, and then our junior year, we made it to the national final round. We played Harvard, and then my senior year against Dennis, we played UVA in the final round. Won the national championship. Privileged to be here. Long-time viewer, first-time guest. So,
yeah, hey guys, I'm Deniz, UVA class of 2019. Also watched a few of these, but it's my first time on. Happy to be here. Like Dan, I competed for 4 years in undergrad, winning the national championship in 2017, but that's not the round we're watching. It's the year before, where we, UVA, lost to Mr. Stern's team right there.
Yeah, we'll watch that one on a different episode. I'm going to start with Dan. Dan, you have a really interesting job. Why don't you tell everyone what you're doing?
I'm actually working back home where I grew up in Baltimore as kind of an assistant coach, research assistant for the Baltimore Ravens football team.
So I don't think anyone would have guessed that was going to be your career path when they watched you in this final round 6 years ago. How'd you get into that?
Yeah, actually, I already, when I was in this final round 6 years ago, I already knew I'd already accepted the job for after I graduated. I would say I just knew from when I was in high school that this is something that I was interested in coaching and football in general. I played until early in high school. My high school actually didn't have a team because it was a small private high school. And I went, after playing for a travel program for a little while, I went and coached my younger brother's club team in the same program. I was also coaching 7-on-7 football over the summer at a camp that I went to growing up. And then when I got to Yale, knowing that this is an avenue that I might want to go down, I started working as a student assistant coach for like a manager for our football team there, our varsity team, my freshman spring. Did it all 4 years, and definitely, even as I was competing in mock trial, law school was on my radar as something that I was thinking about as an option for myself, but I definitely wanted to exhaust this avenue first and see if through whatever skill set I could acquire or work with the football team there, I could get into football at some level, whether it was college or pro. Lucky to get an offer back home after I graduated and have been here ever since. So.
This may shock the viewers to hear this, but I'm actually like slightly more interested in what Dennis is doing right now. Dennis, why don't you tell them what you're doing?
Well, guys, I get to see Phil with what I'm doing, which is attending Drexel Klein School of Law.
One more time.
Drexel Klein School of Law.
That's right. How you liking it? How's it going so far?
It's great. Yeah, I mean, so I had a bit of a different path than Dan. I didn't end up doing football. I ended up doing a different kind of game in the restaurant industry for 2 years between. And, you know, it was my time. So here I am. I'm actually loving the classes, loving Philly. It's a great city. Everyone should come by. And I'm looking forward to getting back into mock trial next year.
Yeah, talk more about Drexel.
Yeah, the trial or the school, everything.
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah, I mean it's a great school. I'm here. I have a pretty phenomenal group of friends. You know, we've got our campus just on Market Street, actually. So we're in the heart of Philly. Everything's here. Go to some Sixers games. Big news on that front lately. But yeah, the school is great. The people are great. It's a very collaborative atmosphere. Everybody wants to see each other succeed, which I know isn't always the case. So I'm having a great time. It's year one. Looking forward to seeing what the other years bring me.
So Dan, ever since your graduation in 2016, you've been working in the NFL, like you said. How much are you following the college mock trial circuit over the last 6 years?
Well, I would say that not very much. Definitely not very much. I would say I get updates sometimes from people I knew in the Yale program when I was there, or just from alums on kind of how it's going for them, and seen a couple of their things, of their rounds since I graduated. And then also my younger brother, Zach, is a junior right now competing for WatchU St. Louis. And so I check in with him and how it's going for him. But I would say all in all, not that much. Excited to get back into it right now. So
With Zoom mock trial over the last year or two, have you been asked to judge scrimmages or judge tournaments and things like that?
I judged Justin Bernstein asked me to judge the one-on-one college mock trial tournament a couple years ago in May. So I did that. That was awesome. Those two competitors, I was in the final round, I was judging, and I thought it was two women who were both unbelievable. So that was awesome. And other than that, I judged once in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, a couple years ago. Grant Keener, who coached Penn State's mock trial team when I was competing in college, invited me out there to judge a round in that tournament. And aside from that, not really, but did both of those. So I judged one of my brother's scrimmages too.
I see your brother's name all over DAP summaries over the last year. He's really
he's much taller. He's more charismatic, funnier, more athletic. Just overall, probably better than I was. But
wow, that's saying something.
No, I mean ZS is freaking goated. So
at the time of this recording, the trial by combat application has come out last night. Actually, any chance he's going to apply?
I don't know. I haven't talked to him about it, but I'm sure. Hey, if he does, watch out. So.
Any chance you're going to be accompanying him as a coach?
I would love to do that. Yo, now I gotta call Zach and see, but definitely love to do that. But let him run it. So
yeah, he should probably note that on his application.
I'll let him know that.
Well, I'm super excited to watch this round with you guys.
There's no nepotism policy though in the tournament, so you gotta evaluate him on the merits and see what happens.
Right. So the round we're about to watch is the 2016 final that Deniz alluded to. This was the second year of the new case for nationals concept that started in 2015, my senior year. This was, I think, the second straight year that you were in the final, Dan. Is that right?
Yep. So we played Harvard the year before. And it's crazy we got back. It's not like we obviously, I feel like we went into every tournament, including the one the year before, like expecting to win, because that was just kind of our mindset is like we weren't going to make predictions, but we were expecting to win. And maybe I was, and then other people were more skeptical. But we definitely felt very unprepared going into the 2016 tournament. I remember that we scrimmaged against Dennis and UVA the night before, and we just thought it was like. We thought it was like an abomination. Like we took way too long on every single roll, and it was just very sloppy and very messy. And we went in the next morning like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? And then Friday, ironed out a lot of stuff in the morning, and just kind of got a little more polished and became increasingly polished over the course of the tournament too.
So speaking of predictions, you go, Dennis.
I was just going to say, Dan, you're not the only one. We felt the exact same way. We had prepped for weeks leading up to nationals. And then after scrimmaging you guys before the thing even started, we felt completely blindsided. You guys poked holes in all our weaknesses. And then, I don't know, it must have worked for both of us, I guess.
Right.
Dan, I was told that you predicted to Justin Bernstein that your team was going to be in the final in 2015. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean you gotta have a little swagger. So
well, let's hear the story. What was the story behind that?
I don't remember the details, but he tells me about it in the aftermath. But we had to email him about something. Like maybe it was like an error in the materials or something like that, and we were emailing him to make sure that he caught it before the revision came out. And I remember I was like, I don't remember exactly. I would have to look it up, but I said something along the lines of like look forward to seeing you. Like hope you look forward to seeing us win our championship or something like that. Like I don't remember exactly what it was, but he gives me crap about that for sure.
So this is his version of the story. So he says that it's Nationals 2015. He's announcing the new case concept and talking about the new case concept. Maybe it's not at some point in 2015. And he takes questions from students, and someone asks whether this puts student-run programs like Yale, for example, at a disadvantage.
That is what it is. That is what it is.
And he said, no, I think there's some great student-run programs who can definitely win this. And he says that you called him and said, thanks for shouting out student-run programs. We're going to win.
No, I emailed him. That is what I said. So I was emailing him about a correction that we found, that we were like, you got to make this correction before the revision comes out. And I just said that we are, I probably said we are under no illusion or something like that as a student-run program, that this puts us at a disadvantage. Because the reality is previous years, we felt like I know that we saw at the time, we saw the new case as a major advantage for our program, because we felt like we don't have like necessarily at that time, our competitors weren't like the most adult looking, like smoothest speaking, like they got Southern accents, like they got all these things, you know what I mean? They're super polished. Like we felt like we got to win how only we can win as a program. Like we got to play to our own strengths, and our strengths, we felt just in terms of the individual competitors, like we felt like we were really creative. We felt like we were responsive. We felt like we could generate good content and think about things maybe a different way than other teams were thinking about them. And we could rely on that and our responsiveness and stuff to produce something that was stronger and more compelling than a lot of other teams on their first shot at it. Whereas in previous years, like when you have the same case all the way through the year, like content kind of converges at a certain point and everybody sees everything. And then at the end of the day, like we actually felt the year before, we were probably more talented. Not probably, we were the most talented team that I was ever on, in my opinion, was what we brought to the 2014 championship. We have Vinay Nayak was like our kind of closer, like all-star attorney. We had like all the witnesses pretty much that you saw in our final rounds. Eleanor was on that team. Allison was on that team. And then we had other witnesses too, who were like spectacular, who weren't, Patrick wasn't on that team, but we had Travis Hutchinson was unbelievable on that team the year before, and Johnny Golding, like we had all these people. And we actually felt like we were so good going into that nationals the year before, but like we got into the rounds and everything was so polished in every direction on every side. Like it was just so hard. I feel like we split every round basically. And we lost ballots. We felt like we should have won. We probably won a couple that we could have lost easily. And it just went against us because it just felt like the polish level was so high across the board. And it was like a little bit more, to us, it was a little bit more random, like who was advancing. And so when the new nationals case came out, we thought even as a student run program, it was a great opportunity for us to like win with creativity, content, responsiveness, and just like adaptability to things that we could see. So that's what I said to him. I was like, our program feels like this is great for us. Like we're excited to prove it by winning a national championship this year.
Do you guys have any memory of what this case was about? Because I have a very vague recollection of this case.
Yeah, this was awesome, because this was honestly, mock trial cases a lot of times are like kind of ridiculous, right? But this was like a whodunit murder where the defendant was accused of killing somebody, and where she or he was like just outright denying any involvement, that they were there. It was like actually a dispute over facts, like with eyewitnesses who say that they saw them there, that may or may not have seen the same person. And like, it was sweet to go out on something like this. I feel like for me as a senior, and we all felt like that, myself, Raymond, and Allison, that this was such a great case and well-written for our last tournament.
Dan was a senior in this round, but Deniz, you were a freshman. How did you end up on UVAA in the national championship as a freshman?
I was a baby. I think I can describe it the way one of my coaches put it later on to me, which is basically that I was confident. I was just confident enough, but not knowledgeable enough to be less confident. So I didn't know what I was going into, right? I was someone who came from the high school world. And now here I am in AMTA, you know, we're doing a couple competitions. I think it's going great. I love it. I don't actually know about teams like Dan's at that time. I don't know how good they are. I don't know the story of AMTA yet. So at that point, I had the sheer confidence of someone who doesn't know what they're getting into, and that worked in nationals. Now the next year, I built that confidence through, you know, skill and knowledge. But yeah, it works as a freshman, but you kind of need to not really know what you're getting into.
Who was the witness you played in this round?
I played Dakota Mansagar.
And who was that witness?
Was known as Dakota Mansagar. What'd you say?
Who was that? What was that witness? How important was that witness in this case? What did this witness say?
Oh, I thought he was the most important witness. You know, not everyone did. It was a convenience store owner. So this guy owned the convenience store near the marina where the murder happened, and he sees the suspect or defendant come into the store and leave. So it's an eyewitness account placing the suspect at the crime.
All right, let's get into this without any further ado.
All right, further evidence from the state.
Yes, Your Honor. The state calls Dakota Mansagar to the stand.
Even the way she says is like it's supposed to be Dakota. She's just like Dakota. Is that what you guys said?
Yeah, Dakota. I mean, you're constrained to the packet, right? I mean, the packet, it says Dakota. We're not going to, we didn't change the name, but why not say it Dakota? It was more true to who I was at the time.
While he's taking the stand, is it all right if we set up an enlargement of Exhibit 11, that map in the well?
Do you have any objection to that?
No, Your Honor, no objection, but it's our understanding that we're not going with the pretrial exhibit numbers, but instead renumbering them as they become introduced. For example, State's Exhibit 1 is in evidence now, so we just asked that it be redesignated as a new State's Exhibit.
Fair enough.
Yeah, what a jerk move
Yes,
to
Your
say
Honor,
that.
what number would you like us to refer to that as?
I think the judge had asked you guys to do that. I don't know that was that your choice?
I have no idea. I'm just looking it back. I'm like, why do I have to say that? Come on.
Which is the next in order?
3?
Your exhibit, Scott.
State's 3 is fine, Your Honor.
Sounds like a fine number.
So there are some people watching this who are freshmen or sophomores in mock trial and are like, what the hell is that thing she's putting on the easel there? That's called a demonstrative, an enlargement. We don't use Zoom. We didn't use Zoom before 2020. We actually had to use like actual blow-ups. So that's what that is. For those of you watching at home in your first year competing and who've never seen that before.
Could you
This
please
whole
introduce
courtroom was
yourself to
created
members of the jury?
like specifically for this trial. I remember like this was like they constructed this from scratch just to house this.
And this was in South Carolina at Firm. This was the year Furman hosted.
Yep.
Yeah. Wait.
Glenn Halvan-Neubauer is an awesome host. The year before, I guess it was like a test case for this national. So Furman hosted an ORC that was supposed to be like kind of like a dry run for the next year. And for some reason, my Delaware team was fed into that ORC. So we got to go to South Carolina to this amazing ORC. It was like a national, there was like a huge banquet. There was t-shirts. All the courtrooms were like set up kind of like this one. They were amazing. And so I was not surprised to hear that this was an awesome tournament. I was very jealous that this was the year I graduated.
Of course. Yeah, I just remembered, speaking of the courtroom being made, I'm very glad that the resolution isn't crystal clear, because we went from closing ceremonies to this amazing, special for us built courtroom, but we did that in the sun. And for anyone who knows me in mock trial, those suits don't protect your eyes from the sweat. It gets really bad. So I'm glad for that.
My name is Dakota Mansagar.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Monsagar?
I work at the Landis Landing. It is a.
That point I was probably like, I'm gonna call him sir as many times as I possibly can. But I'm gonna try to pronounce it the way he's pronounced it.
Right. You're like, I'm not saying that, Dave.
Subjugate myself to.
You're like, nice try. I will not be saying that.
Yeah, no doubt.
The Midlands Marina.
Where is the Midlands Marina?
The marina is about 45 minutes from the center of the town, where the university is. My daughter, she's a sophomore at the Midland State. I come here from Turkey so she can have a good education.
What hours do you normally work?
Well, I'm the manager of the night. So
had you played this type of character, like done this representation for other people, either earlier in the year in this case?
For specifically for the Nationals case?
Yeah, or just in general in the season. Was this like a type of character that you played before?
Oh yeah, definitely. It was I'd played it a few times that season, definitely. And then it came back in future seasons.
So how does that go? Like, do they spot you in practice and they're like, what accents can you do? And you're like, well, I'm Turkish. And they're like, perfect. Like, how does that come to be?
Yeah, it's funny. So when you try out, they actually ask, right, because it's all performative. There's a speech element, there's, a conversation. And then just one of the questions you get asked is, oh, can you do any accents? Are there any voices you can put on? And when I tried out, I actually did not use a Turkish accent. I attempted a very, very bad Southern accent.
Oh my God.
They took me nonetheless, not as a character witness. And then later on, we're in practice. I think this is sometime before the first tournament. No, it's actually right after the team picked who was on it. We were at this welcome dinner, and I'm telling one of my coaches about, my family in Turkey. And he's like, wait, can you do an accent? And I go, oh yeah. See, to me, that had never been an accent. That's just acting like my uncle does. Yeah.
Did you, so the 4 years that you were at UVA, 3-time All-American, did you ever do a character that wasn't Turkish? Or was it just so good that, I mean, I remember talking to Ryan Leonard, who's a good friend of mine and your trial by combat coach and on UVA staff for a bunch of years. And I remember him saying, Dennis is a really good lawyer. He could do it. You were an award winner at GAMTI, but the replacement level of him as that Turkish witness is just so, you can't replace it. So we have to keep him in that role. We just have to.
Yeah, and I think it's because, so I did actually. I've done other accents at varying levels of success. I once tried to, bring back the Southern accent. Terrible. I don't know why I keep trying to do that, but I just like the idea of it. I think the reason the Turkish thing works so well is because it's so authentic to me. I actually loathe when people say, oh, okay, the character is an accent. Like, that was never my character when I did a Turkish character. It's just part of the portrayal.
Two in the air.
Mr. Monsagar, I'd like to talk about March 18th of last month.
Sure.
Were you working that night?
I was. It was a Friday. A very slow day.
How many people did you see in or around your store that night?
Just 2 people that night.
When did you see the first person?
The first person I'm seeing right before 10 in the p.m. I remember there is a silver Honda, and it is coming to the parking lot of the store.
What did that person do?
Well, after the car is parking, the person get out of the car, and I'm seeing that it is a woman. And then she's looking around for a bit, but there were no other cars there.
What happened next?
Well, I see that the woman, she has something in her hand, like cloth, black. And she's take it, stretch it, and put it on the head. And I'm saying it is a mask.
So did you have to write your own answers? I would imagine it would have been really tough for Ryan or Toby or whoever to write those answers.
Yeah, I did. So it was always a team effort. You know, to the point where it's hard to remember any specific direct and know, okay, did I write everything or did I write most of it? We would work in teams to write, but yeah, anytime we did a Turkish witness, the answers had to be coming from me because no one else. Actually, we've also sometimes done things where if we changed roles right before a tournament, you know, we would have someone else playing a character, right? And then we swap roles. Now I have this character directed that's already been written for somebody else. And then so we would call it Turkishifying it. And that would be my job. I would just rewrite the thing how I would say it. And usually I would need to like out loud be talking as I'd write it down.
Are you interested in what your guys' process is, both you guys, for writing direct examinations? Because I know for us, like, and maybe this is similar or different to how people out there do it. Both myself and Sarah Cohen on our team came from the same high school, basically, and we were both on mock trial together in high school. And our team has been for a long time really good in Maryland, which really didn't go to. The school just won the high school national championship last year, but forever we weren't able to participate in high school nationals, so we could only, because the Maryland state championship was like too late. And so we actually won my junior and senior year of high school. We won the state championship in high school, and Sarah was on at least one, possibly both of those teams. And our coach was like incredible. Like the strength of the program was the coach was like unbelievable. And one thing that we felt like was an edge for us was we wanted to be authentic. Like we wanted that to be one of the things that people came away saying about our team in high school was, this is a more realistic team than other teams they're competing against. Like their answers sound less staged. They sound less scripted. They sound more like natural. And one of the ways that we would accomplish that is with direct examinations, we basically wouldn't write anything on paper for a really long time. Like we would start by just kind of sketching out like what are the facts that we want to get out, and kind of like what's the rough order, what's the like outline of the direct in terms of like just broad strokes, where is it moving? And then we would just talk it through, and sometimes we'd record it, or we would just do it over and over again and have the witness basically give answer. And the lawyer's like, why don't you go a little more in this direction with this, or a little more in this direction? But it's like the process of writing was through speaking it out, so that all the answers sounded like somebody would actually say them. And then actually another thing that we would do sometimes is we would drill it where like, now it's like, okay, you just did it. Now say it another way. So it's basically like, okay, we go like, well, what's your name? And you're like, Dennis or whatever. And then what do you do for a living? And you're like, well, I'm a law student right now, you know? And then, okay, but then say it another way. Like, well, I'm actually at school right now. I'm studying to be a lawyer. Say it another way. And we do that throughout the whole direct, where it's like, you just constantly had to repeat the same content, just with different phrasing. And as a consequence, we wouldn't always know what somebody would say like verbatim in a trial, but it usually was basically what we wanted. And then like, to your point, you're building a character. You get to be a method actor and live in the character, and you're writing the responses through just the way that you're responding. So it's interesting how that differs from how you guys have done it before, what you think best practices are.
Deniz, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that a bit. I think and I can really only comment on my witnesses, to that extent, because I think my witnesses were a little different. UVA generally has a pretty structured approach to, figuring out how to write directs. And I mean, it works. But I was a bit less of a structured person when I came to college. So the way my witness was born was kind of by working with older students who were used to the UVA structure, and then almost in a like dialectic way, me being crazy, them reining me back in, and then us giving and taking until we figured out what worked. How that looked in writing a lot of the time was we would sit down to write a direct, and kind of like what you said, Dan, it would be, okay, introduce yourself. And we would go, okay, I mean, do we want to try different characters? Sure, let me be Turkish for this one. My name is Deniz. Or, you know what, let's just play this as, normal yourself. Okay, my name is Deniz. Things like that. The direct was always a living script for us. So the script was there. And I think there's value to having the script there because at a moment's glance, you can look at it, see if there are any, evidentiary issues, things you need to tackle. The paper copy is important there. But what we would do is, if I was in a scrimmage and I just felt like in that moment when I got the question that there was a more natural answer, well, that's what I would give because it was during the scrimmage, and then we would change the answer. So I think it was a bit of a living script, but I think generally we had pretty much everything on paper, unlike you guys.
Yeah. So in college, we were student run. So the process wasn't a very good one. We would sit around the six of us that were on the Delaware team, and we would say, okay, we have 3 witnesses who can do this. They can do this character. They can do this character. They can do this. And then we would sit around and write the witness together, write the jokes, write the one-liners. And it worked mostly well as it could for a student-run program. Now that I'm a coach and the trial director at a law school where we compete in law school tournaments, obviously, first off, and I've said this on the show before, you're not allowed to do characters in law school. It's very frowned upon. You do it like it's borderline grounds for expulsion from the tournament. So we don't do that. So how do I do directs in general? I tend to be a very conservative coach and I value precision. So the idea of witnesses kind of not knowing what they're going to say kind of makes my skin crawl a little bit. And that depends on the student, of course. If I have a really experienced, smart student, I might be more inclined to let them, use a bulleted point structure rather than a word for word structure. But generally, I like to script every word out if we can. And I agree with you, Dan. I don't want to sound scripted or stilted. So let's write it in a way where we're not going to sound scripted. So a good example is Nahir Nanavati, who is an award-winning witness from UMBC's program over the last couple of years, is a Drexel student right now. He's been a witness for some of my teams. And I just kind of know how he speaks. So when we're working on the direct, I know the mannerisms and the verbal tics that he has, and I will write those in. Sometimes he'll do things in scrimmages unintentionally. And I'll say, I really like the way you said that. I'm just going to change that in the script to that. We're going to do it that way from now on. And to Dennis's point, the script does become a living document in that way, because if it sounds weird, or maybe I didn't like the way it sounded, or that does sound scripted, it makes it sound too stagey. Let's fix that and make it sound a little bit more authentic. But I think it's important to have a strict script, at least for my coaching style, because I want to make sure that our stuff is objection proof. We're getting exactly what we need. We're getting the words we need for closing, and that we're not vulnerable to any evidentiary challenges and things like that. Let's get back into
That's cool.
For ski mask.
Before she put on that mask, how well could you see that woman's face?
Very well, of course. The parking lot of the Landis Landing, there is lighting. It is everywhere. So to see a face, it is so clear.
How long could you see her face for?
Before she put on the mask, I'm seeing her face for about 15 seconds.
Mr. Mansagar, do you see the woman who you saw put on that mask in the courtroom today?
So I have to ask this: how rehearsed are the UVA gestures?
They're rehearsed. Yeah. Not all of them. So I would say anything you see on direct is going to be rehearsed. On cross might be off the cuff. And, you know, similar to direct writing, a lot of those gestures come from the way things worked in previous scrimmages, right? Because the first time, you know, we perform in a scrimmage, you haven't rehearsed gestures, right? You barely have a direct. So we do a scrimmage, and then, you know, I pause a certain way. And then after the scrimmage, it's like, oh, hey, Deniz, you should pause a half beat longer when you look that way. And over time, it just becomes part of the performance for that witness. So it's not even always written in. And I think for me, I usually preferred it not to be, because I would just know when the gestures came, but they were rehearsed for sure.
For about 15 seconds.
Mr. Mansagar, do you see the woman who you saw put on that mask?
They're very.
And now you notice them, you know what I mean? Now that you point them out like that.
I like it. I mean, I like it.
She's at the very end of the table over there, wearing all black.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant.
It may so reflect.
Mr. Mansagar, what did you see the defendant do after she put on that mask?
After I saw her put on the mask, I see she's reaching into her car and taking out a bat, like for baseball. Metal, orange bat.
What did you see the defendant do after she took out that bat?
After I see her put on the mask and take the bat, I see that she is walking down the path that go to the marina, where the docks are.
Your Honor, may I turn around that enlargement of States 3?
You may.
Mr. Mansagar, can you tell us where on this map your store is located?
Of course. My store, Land is Landing. It is right on the map where it's a D. The blue square rectangle, this one. And right across from it, the one that says E. This is the part.
I'll take every opportunity to interject yourself physically into the space. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
Can't. Show's about you. You're trying to get your score.
So I had a partner in law school when we won one of the national tournaments in 2017 who could not see far distance, but refused to work her classes in trial. And she would get up and pretend to like look at the demos, and she could not read the demos. She was like, I need to get up and stand in the well with everyone because I want to inject myself into what's going on, but I cannot read anything that's happening on that whiteboard. Which is probably not great, but that's what she did.
So I also just remembered that moment where I say square and cut myself off and say rectangle. That was rehearsed. I did that once in a scrimmage, so we kept it because it looks really natural. It looks like, you know, someone who isn't a native speaker.
This is the parking lot of the store, where I'm seeing the car come.
Where did you see the defendant go once she left your store?
After she left the parking lot, I see her walk down the path, the one with a C on it, with the trees, to the docks that say A and B.
Mr. Mansagar, you mentioned seeing someone else in your store that night.
Of course.
When was that?
This was also right before 10 in the PM. Just a few minutes after I see the woman in the mask.
Could you describe that second person you saw?
Of course. He came into my store. I remember that he had a light skin, short hair, and he looked.
One thing I think Deniz does really well, like just to the point earlier, is like whether or not all this stuff is scripted verbatim. I think that as an actor, just delivering it with the illusion that you're conjuring it for the first time. You know what I'm saying? And that kind of goes to your point about square, rectangle, whatever. That's like non-native speaker, but I think just in general, like that's a quality that really good, even on openings and closings, I feel, especially on closings, I feel like you got to be able to deliver something highly prepared while creating the impression that you're coming up with the words on the spot, and that you're, and one way to do that is to really, as a witness, I've always felt like is, even if it's memorized, like you got to feel what you're saying. Like you got to internalize and think about the visual that the words that you're saying are creating. And you got to tell the story as if you're reaching for those words, because you're allowing them to paint the picture of whatever you're saying in your mind, and then it'll look the way that you want it to look.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Dan. When I have a student who sounds really scripted, it's for robotic because they're really memorized. They say, "Well, how do I fix that?" So you really have to feel the words. Feel the words is always my advice.
Right.
Feel the words, and you actually believe what you're saying. It's going to come off less rehearsed, and that's always my big advice.
Agreed.
If I showed you a photograph, could you tell us if that's the second person you saw that night?
Of course. He came into my store.
Your Honor, may I approach Mr. Mansagar with that photo of Officer Robinson, States 4?
Yes,
Your
sir.
Honor, pursuant to 613B, just permission to see the exhibit.
All right.
Offered to the witness.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had a judge once who was like, who was like, I asked, I was like, can I just see, do you mind if I see it first? Because I was taught at some point that that's what you're supposed to do. And the judge was like, and what rule number is that, counsel? And I'm like, I have no idea. And he was like, it's 613B or whatever he said. He gave me the rule number. So it's for forever. Then after that, I was quoting that rule number.
That's funny.
Approaching Mr. Mansagar with the same.
Thank you.
Mr. Mansagar, do you recognize the man in that photograph?
Yes, I do. This is the man who came into my store that night.
Once that man left
And
the
that's
store-
like, to the point you guys were just talking about, like those kind of moments, like taking some time with a photograph can really help you get into the feeling of the moment. Like right there, I think what I was doing is like realize that you were probably the last person to see this guy, let that sink in.
Where'd he go?
Well, after he paid, he went into the parking lot.
Where do you see him go from that parking lot?
When he was in the parking lot, he turned and he walked down the path C, the one that go to the dock. The same path that...
It's great camera work. Really good camera work there.
The intercut of angles.
Seriously.
Go down.
No, that
AMTA really splurged this year.
was
Yeah,
the tournament host. They got five guys per round, 5 people per round to judge. And then they had the stenographer. Is that the word?
That was not this year. This was 2 years ago, I
I'm
think.
telling you, this one, they gave me a record of the.
Oh, is that her right there? The stenographer?
No, that's her.
Yeah,
That's
she's
her.
right
That's
there.
the stenographer.
She's wearing the
Saying it into herself, yeah. And then
stenographer mask.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Why?
Yeah, that's pre-COVID. That's not a COVID mask.
Did you guys ever get? Did you
What's
guys
that?
get the transcript?
Glenn emailed me. Glenn's the name of the guy who runs the program there, right?
Right.
He emailed me. He emailed me after the tournament was over, and told me that he was like, I believe that you deserve the copy of the book that was produced by this person or something like that. And I'm like, well, could you also give it to like all my teammates, like, or whatever? And he was like, we can make it a PDF. So we got the PDF version, and maybe they printed off additional copies, and we
That's
all
awesome.
so we all got to keep one. But
Did they tell you before the round there was going to be a stenographer and you could ask her to read things back?
I actually had watched, I was in Orlando 2 years
Right.
earlier. There was a stenographer, and going into that, okay, or maybe it was the year before.
No, it was that year.
year.
It was that year.
It was 2 years before. So it was the year that we were really good. It was the year that I was like, sure we were, I mean, it was one of, I was sure.
Orlando, you're right. Orlando.
Yeah. I was sure every single year that we were gonna win it. We were gonna go to and win the national championship. And I was at least the first 2 years I was wrong. And the second year, I was sure. And I saw that there was going to be that. And I was like, we have to use that during the thing. We have to use that. We have to like pin something on somebody. Like we have to, and then they did it I remember them doing it. I don't remember which team, but somebody did it in the actual tournament because we were watching and we were all pissed off too. We were like, what is this? Like, we're better than both these teams. And whether or not that was true. And then they did that and we thought it was sick. And then it like took the person forever to find it just did not play well. Like it was a cool idea, but like, it just didn't really work. And whoever, he couldn't find the line that was being referred to. So then after that, I was kind of like, it needs to be perfect. Like if the perfect thing happens, then we'll do it. And especially like in closing or something, I could say like, I checked with the stenographer and this is exactly what he said. And I just wrote it down, you know what I'm saying? But it didn't, yeah. It was
UCLA, Kyle DeCamp, friend of the show. Love you, Kyle. But he went for it. And it was, I remember that watching that too and thinking, poor Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Monsegar. Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, we're getting into the cross, the moment we've all been waiting for.
Yeah, and that's the moment where I distinctly became aware that I was in fact a freshman because Dan's getting up and all you've been hearing all weekend is about how that guy is the best attorney in AMTA and he's getting up to cross.
I'm not even, the two people sitting next to me are better than me, are better attorneys than me on that table, but I appreciate the
Did you know he was going to cross you?
Hey, I said other people said that, not me.
Did you know he was going to cross you before the round?
I might have learned, immediately before the round.
Right.
But
I remember you telling me that you knew he was going to cross you, so you were prepping with one of the
immediately before the round.
Way.
I knew he was going to cross me, but I don't think I knew that he was going to cross me when we found out we were hitting Yale because I remember feeling intimidated when I learned that it was Dan Stern who was going to cross me.
Major error. It wasn't obviously the way it played out. It wasn't an error, but we definitely like realized midway through the round that we were the only one of our, we didn't scout anybody because we're student run. We didn't have coaches at all. We didn't have another team that was there. Maybe we had might have had a couple people from our association who were there who weren't on our team. I don't remember, but we definitely didn't have people like scouting rounds. When we had hit UVA when we scrimmaged them the night before, it was on the opposite side. And, we were just so flustered by how bad that went. I mean, it just like was very messy. Like it wasn't like it wasn't like we clearly won or clearly lost, but it was just like that was really messy. And we chose defense. I think we won the toss and we chose defense. And we kind of had to go into that knowing that they had probably sent somebody to see us at some point during the tournament and like had written down all our stuff, probably, and that we wouldn't have the same intel on them. But we were just like hoping that it was a better matchup for us than what we already saw. We actually made a lot of changes the night before the last day. We made a ton of changes to our case on the other side. So I remember we all were like, we made the decision, but then we were kind of like not sure of it at all because like we thought our defense case was more creative, but it was just like the P side would have been so much more unscouted. And
did you scout them, Dennis? Did you guys scout Yale?
Yeah, probably. Definitely. Oh, for sure we scouted Yale.
Right.
yeah, we scouted.
He's like, yeah. I don't even remember whether we did or didn't, but we definitely did.
You're gonna be able to tell. Yeah. I mean, the reality is, like, I think that not remembering exactly what we did in this particular cross, or certainly not in the round, but I think that like we were aware going into the round. There's like all kinds of things that we do where we take flyers on things. Right, like in crosses too, and like maybe it's bad practice. I don't know. I'm not trying to give this advice to people, but like there are all types of moments that we take flyers on asking common sense questions to people, or like common sense extrapolations, or just like something like that before we know whether or not they're going to agree with what we're saying. You know what I'm saying? Because we know that we're going to be able to lead them down like this string that's bad for them if they agree with the thing before it becomes clear what we're trying to do with it. You know what I'm saying? And I think like we were definitely apprehensive. I was knowing this cross was like this, if I remember correctly, and we'll see. But it's like I was definitely nervous about like the potential that he was going to disagree with like a lot of things that I was trying to set up other things with, if that makes sense.
And I think he did, and we'll see that.
Yeah.
Yes, please. I'm just going to move it back.
See, the other thing is, so with teams like Yale, like even when we've scouted them, we know that they know that we've scouted them. So you take the scouting report with a grain of salt too, because you're expecting some things to change, and a lot of the preparation boils down to what do you know about these people stylistically, and how can you anticipate that. But I will say also, and especially as a freshman, the nerves you have coming into that final round, and the final round is right after you learn that you qualified for the final round. That's a lot. It definitely diminishes, how much you get out of scouting reports.
With the court's permission.
You may proceed.
Good afternoon, Mr. Monsiger.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing well. We're going to try to get you out of here pretty quickly on a Sunday evening.
Of course.
I just have a few questions about your testimony.
Sure.
First, you said at the beginning of your examination something about your daughter who goes to Midland
I'm
State
so cheesy
University.
with that, by the way, at the beginning. We're trying to get him out quickly.
Yeah,
Come
that's
on.
like a line
Yeah, but
everyone
it's
loves, though.
Yeah,
Everyone-
and the effective part is not asking me how I am, right?
Yeah.
Like you did that well. So many attorneys who know better would, upon being faced with this man saying, how are you? You're just like, oh, I'm
Great.
good. And
Just having a
you?
conversation.
And then I launch into a 5-minute story about my day,
Right, she does.
Midland State University has a lot of students.
Correct?
Your daughter, what color hair does she have?
She's black hair.
Black hair.
Like me.
So this is even one, like, I don't remember this cross, but I have to, this is completely irrelevant. So I gotta be asking this to set something up for later. You know what I mean?
Well, I think your
later.
point here was pretty obvious. It was lots of black-haired female students at the school, and it was
Right.
the identity question. That was really smart.
Right. Yep.
College student,
Of course.
about the same age, looking as any old college student.
I hope, yes.
Midland State University's campus, it's pretty far from where you work, wouldn't you say, sir?
Right. Like I said before, it is about 45 minutes from the marina.
And that's if you have good traffic, it's 45 minutes, right?
Right. If there's good lot of traffic, it is taking about 45 minutes.
That's great by Dennis, man.
Great.
So that's like right. That's like in the affidavit, it's saying basically that like it takes you 45 minutes. The affidavit is basically like, if you were just to neutrally read the affidavit, you'd be like, it's saying, like if you're good with traffic or something like that, like basically if you go as fast as you can, it will be 45 minutes. And I don't remember the details of this case, but I'm sure that basically like it was about somebody needed to get like, basically like she was seen at a certain time and then it was too soon after somebody else saw her. Right. So I think like that way of characterizing it flips it to your advantage. Now you're saying that it's you could get there faster than 45 minutes, but if there's a lot of traffic, it will take you 45 minutes. And it kind of goes to like one thing that I don't know if I'm supposed like, definitely like all the ways that hearing about like kind of what's been done and said like the last few years, like about like Yale and the way that we represented stuff, right?
Right.
Like from our program. Okay. We never wanted to invent anything that was not, we felt like we weren't trying to invent material facts. That's not really what like we're never like, oh, we're going to invent material facts. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just talking about while I was in the program. I don't know
Right.
about, they didn't do that after either, but I'm saying like, well, we were in the program. We were always like, we need to be unimpeachable. First of all, like we need to invent. It's not invent. It's like interpret in a way that can't be impeached, but we also were cognizant. We were like, the witness wrote the affidavit didn't write the witness. Like, that was our interpretation at the time, before there was all these clarifying memos. And I feel like everybody did this at the time.
True.
Probably us to a greater degree than most teams, right? Fairly, probably us to most teams.
But we were
like
right there with
competitive edge for us, right? But I think that our interpretation of closed universe was we were limited to all of the materials in the case and nothing else, right? However, our people wrote the affidavit, like our witnesses wrote the affidavits. The affidavits did not write the witnesses. And if there's like logical holes in the affidavit, or there's things that are omitted that would be like, that are necessary, you know what I mean, to complete the chain. It's like, or there's words like it's good traffic, right? Like, the witness is the one who wrote that, so the witness knows what it means,
right?
And has to defend what they meant, right? In the face of impeachment. And I think that is a great example of that, where it's like, you created an edge for yourself by characterizing a word a certain way, where it could conceivably, I mean, is it like a reasonable interpretation of that word? Like, I don't really know what that means. Like, you're the one who wrote that word, so you know what it means. And also, I will say, why do you play a character in the first place, right? Like, you select your portrait, in my opinion. This was just my opinion at the time. And like, I'm not trying to like send shockwaves, you know what I'm saying? And I know there's been all sorts of clarifying stuff that's come out in the years since then, where people's philosophies have probably changed, honestly, in recent years, maybe in response to us winning a lot, but not trying to jab that way. But at the time, my mindset was, when you're building a character, you're doing it for a reason. You know what I'm saying? We're not just like using this dude, like, we're not just putting on some accent or choosing to characterize somebody a certain way. And there's all kinds of characters that we've played. We had people who were germaphobes. We had people who were like experts. We had people who were like they portrayed themselves as lazy. They portrayed themselves as meticulous. They portrayed themselves as detailed in their observation. Like, we had all these different types of portrayals that you could play. And really, you're selecting a portrayal to cover up for things that you don't like about the pattern. Like, it was our mindset. Like, we're trying to choose a character that is most helpful to our case in terms of how it enhances the credibility of certain facts that they're going to present, and also reduces the harm done by things that you have to admit. And that's one where you're using like the nature, oh, you're not a natural English speaker, and so you didn't write like the word that you were supposed to use, and you confused it like a little bit because it is a double meaning. And now, so like, I think that's really good personally. Yeah. And I think like whether or not that's acceptable is like obviously something that I really don't know where the precedent or law is on that right now, just because I haven't been involved or paying attention. But I definitely, at the time, my view was like, the witness wrote the affidavit. The witness needs to be able to survive impeachment. The witness knows what the affidavit means and has to be able to hold that up against impeachment. But also, the witness is choosing what it means and choosing the characterization and the portrayal strategically for their team. Like, that's part of the competition. That's part of what makes the competition fun, is that it allows teams and coaches and competitors the flexibility to adjust their characterization and their interpretation of certain words, and the characterization, like in terms of how it helps or hurts certain facts. That's like the strategy of the game to me.
I guess I have two thoughts on it. The first is that I agree with you that the culture, at least Dan, when you and I were competing, and obviously when Dennis graduated, it was sort of fading out, but that was just part of the way it was done. I remember we had a nasty interpretation of a certain fact in the Neptune case that we used pretty brutally a couple times against teams. Dan, you probably don't remember this, but we had a really nasty invention against your team at Qbait. It was the first time you and I had ever met. I'm sure you don't remember this, but I don't even remember because it was a crazy round. It was the Whip Bowman case, and I'm sure we weren't the only team to do this, but we called the ticket booth person, Haley Floyd, in our defense case
Hostile, right?
to say she did it.
No, we had a hostile one too. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think, and even just like Fisher, right? Like in this case, like when you get to the direct that we did of Pat in this case, that was like easily the element of this case that we were the most proud of, right? Like we were like, this is genius. Like when we came up with it, we were like, this is going to win us. This is going to win us rounds. This portrayal. Because what we're doing is we're trying to build something. It's not outside. Okay, like, yeah, he changes his mind kind of on the stand and expresses doubt on the stand when he's confronted with all the evidence that goes the other way, right? But it's like, it's not no longer closed universe. It's like, it's still a closed universe. He comes on the stand. He wrote the affidavit the way that it was written, where he basically is like, I saw this person, right? But there's also contradictions all through the affidavit. So if you're a real person and you wrote that, and then you get into court and you're confronted with all of these things that don't make sense with what you said, and you're confronted with the contradictions, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? At that point, you're forced as a witness to do something. And it's like, you can't just invent stuff, but it's still within the closed universe. Like their reactions to what the lawyer is saying is what we felt. I mean, and there's other examples too, like not to call it like Rhodes, like, okay, when we played Yale, my freshman year, it was scuba divers. This is what I remember thinking in the aftermath of when people from my this was really the most recent time that I've thought about my trial a lot, right? More than like 15, 20 minutes is when people from my program were I was at that trial, actually. I was watching it because UMBC had brought me to a practice during our off season one time, and I'd seen UMBC practice, and I'd just like met some of the competitors there, and they had invited me. They were playing Yale somewhere close to Baltimore, wherever the tournament was. And they invited me up to watch it. So I watched it, and then Yale advanced, and I watched the Yale final, the Yale Rose final. I was in the room. And afterwards I heard about, like, from competitors on Yale, like all the aftermath and stuff like that. And I agree that my reaction at the time to that trial was like, wow, like that was really far. First of all, I just didn't think it was like effective. I didn't think it was like a convincing case personally. Like I thought that it was like, I thought that the way that they approached the case, I just didn't think the theory, I don't know. Personally, like I just independently, I wasn't, and I told Elizabeth this at the time, like I wasn't a fan independently of the theory because I thought it wasn't credible. I thought it wasn't realistic. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I thought that was, like I said, that's like a value that I have in my trial is like realism. And I didn't really think it was realistic, but I remember in the aftermath, they were talking about, like Yale's the only team that does this. It's like Rhodes, my freshman year, we were playing them in the scuba diving case. And I had to cross like the most incredible witness of all time. Like she was unbelievable. I don't remember her name, and I don't remember what the character's name was, but it was somebody who had a credibility issue because in the case packet, it said that she smuggled a bunch of drugs. And so I was crossing her on, she smuggled a bunch of drugs or whatever. And she starts talking about how the reason that she did it was because like her grandma was in pain because she had cancer or something and needed weed to feel less pain. And that was the reason. And that wasn't in the case materials, you know what I'm saying? But it's like, I didn't really have a problem with that. I mean, I definitely didn't have a problem with that at the time. And I still don't have a problem with that because it's like, there had to be, there is some, you can't just expect somebody to be confronted with evidence. There is, personally, I believe that there is, people have reasons for the things that they do. You know what I'm saying? Like real people do. And like in this case with the handwriting, like if you confront Eleanor with the handwriting and you're like, these two things.
And that was phenomenal.
What's she supposed to say? Like she has to say something. She can't just be like, no, they don't. You know what I mean? Like, and it doesn't address that fact.
There's no suspension of disbelief. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess there's nothing in her affidavit that addresses that fact. So it's like, she has to have a response to that, doesn't she?
Yeah, I guess I definitely agree with you, Dan. And I guess, well, I feel like to the extent that there was a lot of criticism, and not just of Yale, of any teams that were doing this, I think it got to be really, it kind of peaked right after you graduated, I think is where it got to like, started to get out of hand. But it was really bad when I was competing too. But that's just kind of that was you, if you weren't doing that, you really had no chance.
It was just part of the competition. It's like,
Yeah.
and to me, it's like a super attractive part of the competition, because it's not just about how, to me, like the competition isn't just about how you present. It's not just about your presentation skills. You know what I mean? It's also about, and I get what people would say that it's like a closed universe in real life, but like people also, I don't know. I mean, I obviously like, I'm on one side of this, but I do think like for me, that was something that was really enjoyable as part of the activity, was the idea that we are operating in a closed universe, but how can you create things within the closed universe
Yeah.
that still fit, that aren't going to look ridiculous when they're impeached, and that fit with like, this is actually something that could have happened. And the person, if this were an actual person who were writing an affidavit, they might not have thought to include this because they didn't think it was relevant information, because it's like not within their, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's a little bit far on the scale, but like that was part of the enjoyment I feel like that I took from the activity, was like trying to come up with content that still made sense, but would catch other teams off guard, or that would give us competitive edges.
I'll push back on that before we get back to the cross in a second, and just kind of give you a counterpoint, which is, I don't think there are many things that law school mock trial gets right when compared to college. College does almost everything better. The one thing that law school does better is how law school deals with invention of fact. And law school tournaments use a necessary inference rule, meaning if it's not necessary, you can't say it. It's an invention. So things like, if I'm a police officer, I went to the academy, that's necessary inference, but it's not a necessary inference that I was first in my class, right? So it means that everyone is basically playing on the same playing field. It is strictly about, and that's the same thing with the no character witness stuff. Like, I didn't love that when I first started competing in law school. I was used to what, we're watching now, but it really is all about the substance, and all about the attorneying, and all about technique and substance. And in that respect, if it doesn't become a who can invent the best thing that's tough to impeach on, I kind of prefer that. And I think I never would have guessed that when I graduated from college. I never in a million years would have thought that. And the law school tournaments are, if you think AMTA is sensitive now, and AMTA is sensitive now, very sensitive, I think, as they should be. But the law school tournaments, it's not even a comparison. I mean, you can't invent anything. And if you do, it's a very harsh penalty. I kind of respect.
It's definitely more black and white. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's definitely more, it is not the way that I understood the rule or the intent of the competition at the time. You know what I'm saying? Right. And I think that came from, I mean, we didn't, like you said, we didn't have coaches that like read like we observed, we watched other teams, we whatever, and we tried to do the best that we could, like in that framework. And I don't think that any of us, we were always worried about getting impeached. That was always what we were worried about. When we said anything, we were like, is this something that will stand up to impeachment?
Right.
We were never like thinking in terms of invention of fact, because our understanding was basically like that invention of fact is about impeachment, and that effective impeachment really hurts you. Like that's what we always felt like, is we did not want to be effectively impeached, but we also wanted to be clever with the materials that were there. And we wanted to, I mean, we definitely wanted to have creativity with the way that we interpreted lines and words, just like how UVA changed the meaning of that one word with your inexperience with the English language. You know what I'm saying? So that's a long way of getting back to where we were. But like, I remember thinking at the time, I'm like, wow, that's really creative. And that's a great way of that. You own the affidavit. The affidavit doesn't own you. And you chose the characterization to help you flip a fact.
Now, sir, I want to talk about what you say you saw on the 18th of March. Do you remember telling the jury confidently a moment ago that you saw the masked person pull a baseball bat out of their car?
That's right.
Now, sir, you said it confidently today to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, but some things have happened between today and March 18th, right?
What do you mean?
Well, for example, you've watched the news. Isn't that true?
Of course, I do watch it.
You've watched a fair bit of press coverage of this case, haven't you, sir?
Well, I saw enough to know what is going on.
You saw...
It was in my affidavit. I had to agree to that.
Was killed at the docks that night, right?
I did. This was the same night I come home from my shift. I called the police.
And I think also you need to one thing that I thought about a lot when crossing was like any fact that you want you need to link like if you want to disagree with a fact like here, like the fact that like basically we wanted to say that he was influenced by what he saw in between when he saw it and when he's testifying. And we needed that to be true about a lot of things, right? And we were using the line in the affidavit. There was a line like I didn't know if what I saw was a bat or a rod or a fishing rod,
Right.
and we wanted to pair that. Like one creative content thing for us was we were trying to it's obviously a bat. It's a bat, whoever it is. We're not disagreeing that it's a bat, right? But what we're trying to do is use the uncertainty of that to link that to uncertainty that we actually care about of a lot of other things. And we're trying to basically set with the lines in his affidavit, we're trying to basically say like, you express certainty about this on your direct examination, but I'm going to be able to show you that you actually have said before you were uncertain about it. And you only said you're certain about it. Let's talk about why you said you're certain about it. It's because you saw on the news that that's what it was. And now you're saying that's what it is, even though that's not actually what you saw or knew you saw at the time. You know what I'm saying? So it's like.
No, I see the man in my store.
On the news, you saw a description of how Officer Robinson was killed. Isn't that true?
Not really. It is just saying that this death it is happening.
But you've seen.
That's one also where right there, it's like, would he have disagreed with that if he didn't know where if he doesn't know the direction I'm going with it? Would he disagree with that? Like maybe, but
it was also such a good.
I would say that.
It was also such a good way of saying no too. The way you said it.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Dan does a really effective thing. It was actually the line of questioning right beforehand, though. Of you make your questions seem also natural and off the cuff. Like you weren't saying, well, it's true, Mr. Mansagar, that between this date and this date, you watch the news, right? You just go, you watch the news, right? And then, it was so easy for me to feel like we were having a conversation. And I was just like, yeah, of course. Now, I don't know if that was my plan at the time. It might have been, but, I could see you ruining a ton of people like that.
Well, it's just a great reminder to disagree. I mean, if you're a witness, like, and you really know what's in your statement, I mean, and especially if you know what's coming and you compare it to what's in your statement because you have notes on what somebody did, but regardless, like, you should disagree as much as possible.
No is the best.
Like, and just in a super casual way. Just like, if you're just like, no, that's not true. That's a great answer. It just throws, especially like, no, it's an unbelievable answer. And even if the question seems innocuous, like they're probably asking it for a reason. And at worst, you're just going to disrupt the rhythm of what they're saying.
Yeah, I think another just, tip out there in the same vein is, as a witness, just always pause. Give yourself time to make sure that you're answering the question the way you want to answer, because the attorney's the one on the clock there. You aren't. And, the pause always feels longer for the person taking it than everyone who hears. Like that pause to the question you just asked me, I felt like it took forever, but listening to it now, it seems pretty reasonable to me.
Saying that this death, it is happening.
But you've seen multiple news reports about it, right?
Of course, I see one or two.
So today, after you've seen those news reports,
that's another one too, where he disagreed that he disagreed that he saw that it was a bat that was used on the news. Like, that was the point of the question, was to be like, you're saying that this was a bat because you saw on the news that they were saying that a bat was used, right? He disagreed with that, but it's like, you can't get thrown off by that. You have to know as a lawyer, if you're asking questions that they might you can, to me, like, one of the things of the way that I did it is like, I would ask questions that I know they might disagree with, like, and I just have to live with the result. If they disagree with it, they might agree with it, and then it's great for my case. And I can use that even regardless, even if it's not in his affidavit, even if a direct contradiction is in his affidavit, or even if it's not in his affidavit at all, he might disagree with it. But if he doesn't, then that's what's on the record, and I can use that throughout the rest of the trial. So I've just created a fact that I can now use for myself throughout the rest of the trial. But if he does disagree with it, it's almost like saying it has the intended effect on the jury either way, or I can transition in a way where the next question he has to agree to, but it kind of reflects the previous question. So this is like one where it's like you saw a description of what happened in this crime, and he's like, no, and I'm like, you saw news coverage of this case, and it's like it almost answers the previous question for him in a different way, but he has to agree with it, if that makes sense.
Confidently that item that was pulled out of the trunk of the car was a baseball bat. You remember telling them that?
Right.
At the time, you weren't so sure you saw that, sir, were you?
Well, like I say, she's pulling out, and it is looking like a baseball bat.
Well, at the time, sir, you thought it might have been a fishing rod, too. Isn't that true?
That's like another thing that I always did. I did that all the time, is like a quasi impeachment. Like I hate impeachments, like actually going like through the whole I just think it's like such a waste of time, and I think it has such a high % chance of failing, because when you finally get up there, everybody's forgotten what the person originally said. So for dramatic, like what I always try to do, unless they really disagree with it, and maybe it's bad form, but I just felt like it was much more effective for scores, was like either re-ask the question with the thing in my hand, so that like I'm threatening an impeachment.
Right.
Or the other one that I loved was, sir, when you previously answered questions for lawyers, or like, sir, when you wrote your affidavit about the facts that happened, you said that it was this.
Which is an impeachment. I mean, that is an impeachment.
Yeah.
And if they want to disagree then, and I really need to go through the whole process and show it and present it to everybody, then I will. But it's like, that is like the quick hitting impeachment that just like, you told us previously that it was this. Didn't you do that? Yeah. And then it draws everybody's attention to that, and then it makes a full impeachment more effective if I need to, but it doesn't use all this time and disrupt my rhythm if I don't.
That's one of the things with in-person. I like to have one of my kids who's sitting down watching the cross happen, holding the affidavit with the page open, arm extended. As soon as the witness does that, like signaling to everyone in the room, we're right, this witness is wrong, and they're going to get impeached if they don't correct themselves. So I think I agree with you. I like the first tactic.
Of course, but it looked like a baseball bat.
But you thought it looked like it might have been a fishing rod as well. That's what you thought before you saw all those news reports. Isn't that true, sir?
No. When I saw it, I thought it looked like a baseball bat. But also, I think that maybe is like a fishing rod, because it is marina.
Mr. Monsiger, let's talk about some other things that you thought you saw at the time.
Of course.
You told us that you...
And there's Justin Bernstein's head right there. There he is. Legend. Friend of the show.
Right?
Well, I do not, at the time, I'm not knowing who Skylar Sinclair is.
Exactly,
but
sir.
I do know this is the woman I see that night.
Oh, that's what you say confidently now, but sir, the truth is at the time, you couldn't be positive about the face you saw, could you?
The face I see?
Well, sir, you were in your gas station store here, right?
It's like it had its intended effects, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It had its intended effects. You know, you said it. If he disagrees with it, oh no, I was confident. You know what I mean? I could be confident. Now it's like, okay, well, let's go in. You know what I'm saying? But he gave a non-response. Now it's just like, I'm moving on anyway. I've already said what I needed to say.
The parking lot, it's out behind these pumps on this side of point E on the map. Isn't that true?
No, actually, point E, that one, that is where the Honda, it is parking.
Oh, it was parked on the other side of the pumps. Isn't that true?
Well, on point E, yes.
And there was a window between you and that parking lot. Isn't that true?
Right. A huge window, so I'm able to see all the customers before they come.
And sir, you were also standing behind your cash register. Isn't that true?
Right, well, I was in my office. The window, it is right next to me.
So you're behind your cash register looking through a window past the pumps out into the parking lot, isn't that right?
Right. But again, where the car is, it is not behind the pump.
And Mr. Monsiger, when you were looking out the window through the parking lot from behind your cash register, it was 10 p.m., wasn't it, sir?
Not exactly 10 p.m. Like I say, it was a bit before.
Well, the sun had already set, hadn't it? Yes or no?
Of course, of course.
And not only
I feel like one thing that he's doing a really good job of is he's disrupting I'm just trying to establish tempo and rhythm with my questions. Like I'm trying to control if you're a crossing attorney, you need to control the tempo of the cross, right? That's like the number one thing is like, you need to have the jury not hearing the answers because they're with you and they're with your cadence and they're with your, you know what I'm saying? The answers are just like interjections. And one thing that I think he's doing a really good job of is changing the tempo.
Dennis does a really good job in this cross of saying yes or no, but saying it in like a complete sentence. So he'll say like, well, first I thought it was a baseball bat. And then I thought maybe it's a fishing rod because after all, we were at the marina. So it could have been either, when really he could have just said correct. And it does disrupt the timing a little bit. And it's, really effective. Although it's low risk.
No doubt. I mean, and just the pauses too, right? I mean, I think one thing that I have in my style is like, I am very like, boom, boom, boom. You know what I mean? Like I'll kind of speak fast and stack a lot of things. And I think that like taking deliberate pauses like he did is one way to really disrupt my tempo specifically. And I got to respond like I just did by like either massively shortening the question and changing it back. So I'm like reasserting tempo, or by like doing a lot of looping kind of.
I was actually going to say you sped me up pretty well.
Yeah, it was like a perfect pacing. He was speeding you up and you were slowing him down.
Yeah, I mean, just from the beginning of the cross to there.
It was a really foggy night that night, wasn't it?
Well, it was a little foggy. It was mainly foggy at the dock, like most night.
Sir, do you remember telling us in your sworn statement that it was really foggy that night?
Like I say, it was very foggy at the dock, where it normally is.
So you were looking through the window, out into the parking lot, past the pumps, from behind your cash register at 9:45 p.m. on a really foggy night.
Well, like I'm saying, the fog, it is not where I am.
See, at this point, I'm just going to move on to it's like.
You made your point, yeah.
Sir, let's talk about
Well, also, so that's something I want to point out too. His body language there is really, really effective. Like that moment right there was, I think maybe, like a turning point in the cross. Like basically, I think he's taking the control and saying this witness is unreliable. And he does that really.
Watch him turn his back
effectively.
Oh, he just turns his back as your answers. It's really effective.
Yeah, because if the crossing attorney isn't even
we're moving on with or
to
without
what that witness is saying, then why should the jury, right? You would think the crossing attorney would be invested.
No, at some point, you have to move on, like with or without the
I
witness.
was about...
Yeah.
Of course. Permission, Your Honor, for Mr. Zhu to step down and approach the bench.
Any objection?
And I mean, that's a witness skill too.
And I apologize, Your Honor, if this is something you consider
Learning that difference.
Well, you said to the judge, Dan, I apologize if this is something you consider nefarious. After
That was from earlier. Yeah, that was from earlier in the trial, right? That was from pre-trial. He was like,
Yeah.
I don't remember what he said. He was like demonstrations or whatever, unless it's nefarious, like unless it's something nefarious, Right. And so then I just
a weird old man thing to say.
Right. But every opportunity to be responsive, right? So I knew from when he said that immediately, that's like
you're going to use it at some point, yeah.
100%. Like I had to use it, or I knew that in this moment I was going to use it too. You know what I'm saying? Like every time that the judge says something that is really, anytime anybody says something that's like everybody's going to remember that they said that because they used a weird word or something like that. Any opportunity that you have as a crossing attorney to spin the word back on the witness or to use it in a context like this is like, you have to take that.
So had you done the tape trick before in this tournament? And if so, were you nervous that they saw it and were ready?
Yeah, we definitely had done it. I don't know if we were really nervous about it, just because it's kind of the same thing. It's like you're the one who's as the lawyer on cross. If you're the one that's testifying, and like with your pace and your volume and everything else, like you control the movement of the direct, and we felt like we could make this effective regardless. And then especially when we measured out the courtroom and we realized like it was pretty big, and like you get all the way to the back and you're still not to the distance that you need. We were like, this is going to be really effective in this space with all these people in between. Like we have to do this.
This guy here grabbing it.
Can you pull it tight, Mr.
The other thing I'll say about this too is this like one of our big philosophies also just on winning mock trial was like we wanted to create what we call TV moments in every trial. Like that's what we always talked about, that we use those words. We were like, we want TV moments. Like you're watching Law and Order and there's like a moment where like a lawyer does something or says something and it's super showy, or it's like the phrasing or the witness breaks down on the stand and admits whatever. It's like, and then there's a cut scene. It's like that happens in Law and Order, the practice. It's like they prove their point. Like it's unbelievable. Everybody's gripped, like you're on the edge of your seats. And then there's a cut scene to like, okay, 5 years later or whatever. And one of our big philosophies was like, we want to be authentic. We want to be all these things, but we also know that like we're getting evaluated like based on how entertained these people are who are sitting there. And it needs to be like watching Law and Order for them, where it's like there are specific moments in parts that they're just like, oh my God, like that is so like. Another one in this trial was like when Allison stands up and takes off her shoes, and then Patrick starts changing his mind about whether or not he saw, if you've seen the whole trial, right? Like that's like that's a TV moment. Like, can you stand up? Can you step out? Can you take off your shoes? Like, and you can have TV moments within crosses and stuff like that too. But like, we just knew that we needed like 2 to 3 per round to be consistently scoring better than the other team. And this was definitely one that we were including for that reason.
And also, for what it's worth, the final round in person is like no other round. So much of the momentum in that round comes from the crowd, and you know, the second you get a couple of laughs, like it changes
Right.
the entire atmosphere.
Here comes the biggest,
Mr. Zoot to myself, Mr.
one of the biggest moments ever.
See me and hear me?
Of course I can. Though I think you're about
He played into me there, right? So I just like there, right? Because I know you're going to ask about the thing in a minute, and I knew going. So what did I know that I was going to do, and what didn't I know that I was going to do, right? Like when the judge is going to, when I'm going to say I couldn't hear him, I didn't know I was going to do that. Like that was in the moment. It was unscripted, but this I knew when I was there, when I felt the space, I was like, I'm going to like purposefully like change my voice, and I'm going to like project as if I'm screaming to him over on the other side of the room just to demonstrate how far away I am. And then I was fortunate that he played back into me and was like doing the same thing with his voice.
I noticed that too.
Yeah, it worked.
Before hitting the door, I'm 44 and a half feet away from you. You are actually further from the person you saw than I am from you now. Isn't that true?
Right. Exactly.
So you were looking further than that.
Objection.
Through the window.
Hold on. Yes,
Your Honor, I just asked Mr. Monsegar be allowed to finish his answer.
that's fair enough. Finish your
I
answer.
apologize, Your Honor. I couldn't hear him from over there.
And there it is. So you just, the
Yeah,
moment
I
you
mean,
were like, I'm going to
I
bury
really
him.
lucked into that. I lucked into
Money.
that. Yeah.
So you just, as soon as she objected, did you know you're going to do it?
When she objected, I definitely knew very, like, as soon as she was saying like let him finish his answer, I definitely figured out that. Yeah.
Salivating.
So this is when he's full tempo. This is at this point, this is Dan's show. And in fact, I think one of the biggest examples of that is like 2 questions right before this. We knew they were going to do a tape measure, so we measured the courtroom ourselves, and we found out the distance from, you know, the witness stand to the end of the door where they would probably measure to was 45 feet. So, you know, he goes there, and I try to cut him off before he starts his roll by saying, oh, I think you're about 45 feet away, to give myself credibility. No one even heard that because of the tempo he picked up. So at that point, like somewhere between that other line of questioning we were talking about and right here, and I think it might be when he turned his back a few minutes ago, like it changes the whole dynamic of the cross, and this part is so effective.
Which just also like you're communicating with the witness.
I was just saying.
Is all I was gonna say was that it's like if he says you're 40 feet away, you're how many feet away, like you have to agree with that. You have to be like, exactly. You can't just repeat. You can't just say it as if you never said it. You have to acknowledge that they're saying it.
Mr. Monsegar, you were actually further than I was from you, looking through the window into a foggy night at 9:45 p.m. from behind your cash register when you saw this face you say was Skylar's.
Right. Again, there was no fog there. Yes.
Oh, let's talk about what you could actually see through the window from that distance at 9:45 p.m.?
Of course.
Oh, you could see her hair color, right?
Sure.
It was brown.
Right.
You could see her gender.
This is what you're
Right,
setting
like
up
I
at the
said,
beginning of the cross.
woman.
You could see that she looked about college age.
She looked to me.
But as we've established, there are a lot of female brown-haired college students in the state of Midlands, aren't there?
Of course.
You couldn't tell her eye color, could you?
No, not her exact eye color.
And sir, let's talk about how confidently you actually saw her face. The next day, you were
Sure.
brought into the police station to identify some photos in a lineup. Isn't that true?
I was. After I called the police station, they're inviting me in for identification.
Now, sir, this lineup, it had a very unusual procedure, wouldn't you say?
I do not know what the usual lineup
Well,
is.
sir, they didn't show you 6 photos at the same time, did they?
No. The officer there, he's give me 6 photos and say to me, I look at them one at a time.
Exactly,
And he's-
sir. So he wanted you to look at...
Objection. Your Honor, I just asked Mr. Monsegar be allowed to finish his answer.
Go ahead and finish your answer.
Please continue, sir.
And he said to me to tell him if the person I see in the photo is a person I'm seeing that night. But if I do not see the person, to tell him this.
And then he told you once you looked at a photo once, you couldn't look at it again. Isn't that true, sir?
Right.
Did you
Only to
prepare
look
for
at
this?
them one at a time.
I don't remember, honestly. I don't think this was the first time I had been crossed, with that line of questioning, though.
Got you.
Exactly.
We thought we were
So
being
he
so
handed you the
clever
first
here, you know what I
photo,
mean?
And you looked at it, right?
Well, he handed me a stack of photos.
Sure.
And I looked
the
one
argument's
by
good.
one.
You looked at the first photo and you said, no, this isn't the girl, right?
I did not say anything, no.
Exactly. You handed it back to him.
No, that is not true.
You flipped it to the bottom of the stack.
I
Just
put
taking
it
guesses.
down right next to me.
And
Like, that's
you
not true.
positively identify photo number 1 as the girl you saw.
Of course not.
Photo number 2, same thing happens. You don't say anything about that photo being the girl, and then you set it aside.
All right, I'm supposed to look at each one of the photos.
Photo number
So
3,
it's
you
coming
look at
to
it for a
memory.
moment.
Dan, I'm not sure whether we knew you guys were going to do this, but at some point we specifically studied that part of the AF to make sure that we were bulletproof on what the line of questioning would be.
Me and Allison were in some class that was double listed in law school and psychology or something. And they were like, me and Allison were both in the class and they talked about the difference between sequential versus like simultaneous lineups.
Oh, you're kidding. That year?
Yeah. And it was like the whole point was basically like maybe in the fall. And the whole point was like how sequential are better because it's simultaneous. Like they're going to feel pressure to identify somebody. So they're going to choose the closest fit. And if you just do it one at a time, they gotta just basically you're saying no, like I was trying to, that stuff was not in your thing, obviously, like you weren't like spelling out the benefits of that in your deal, but I was trying to communicate that to the jury through the questioning, right? And you were definitely making it really hard because you were just like disagreeing with the premises a lot, so hopefully it still came through for me, but
At that point, I also think you were just on such a roll that I wanted to do
Just
whatever
like
I
the
could
other
to
photos,
slow you
didn't
down.
say anything about it before you set it aside. Isn't that true?
That's right. But photo 3 was the one that looked exactly like the woman I'm seeing that night.
Well, sir, let's break down what you actually did. You looked
Sure.
at photo number 3, and when it was in your hands and you were looking at it, you didn't say, oh, this is the girl I saw, did you?
No, of course not.
so now you got to
Because
tie
I'm
it back to
supposed
the affidavit. Like you're making the big social study, whatever point about like what the benefit is, but now you're bringing it back into the affidavit with facts because those are things he would have had to include that
Right.
he said immediately. You know what I'm saying? So now you're grounding
Right.
it, he has to agree with.
Look at each of the photos.
Of course not, sir. You say you were staring at a...
And I think like this is sort of goes without saying, and it's so obvious, and I think we just haven't said it, but this is probably what people would consider the best attorney of our generation versus the best witness of our generation. So I think all this high level discussion we're having is a product of, first off, two people from probably the two best teams at this time over the course of these couple of years, but I think probably the best attorney and best witness, and such a fun back and forth.
The person You so confidently identified today, you didn't say, oh, I recognize this person while you had the photo in your hand. Did you, sir?
Right. The police give me the instruction to look at each one of the photo.
It's one of my favorite types of questions, by the way, is a question where you are, I just think that everybody when they cross like is way too, and it goes, this is like a more acceptable, like nobody disagrees this is an acceptable form of creativity, but like I think that like people are way too married to like asking questions that are direct lines from the affidavit, and you're just like agree, and it's like really high level crosses, in my opinion, ask a lot of omission questions, like you didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, that are made up, invented things.
Right.
You were called this person and said this, you know, and it's like all that's how you attack the credibility of a fact that's actually in there. You don't just ignore that a piece of testimony that you disagree with, like this could not possibly have happened if our case is made. You don't just ignore that the person said that. You so doubt in it, and you can't ask about the fact point blank. So you either have to create a reason that they're lying about it and then ask it and then be like super incredulous about it as the attorney and then move to like you're biased in such and such way, or you need to ask all the omission questions that basically discredit what they said, you know?
Exactly. I think that's the way to handle something like that, is to figure out, well, what are all the things that would exist if that were true? And we know that all those things don't exist because it's not contained anywhere.
Right.
I want to be very, very careful about what I see.
So do we, Mr. Manseger. You looked at photo number
Hold on. Yes, ma'am.
Argumentative, Your Honor.
Sustained.
You looked at photo number 3.
And you're just totally unfazed. You're just like, okay.
No, I mean, I got that actually. I got that from Zach Fields the year before. I'd never done anything like that except for Vinay. Vinay did it once, and I was like, I don't know. But then in our championship trial against Harvard the year before, Zach had a moment like that too in his cross, and I just thought it was so I thought it was so sick. So I was like, I got to do that at some point.
And you didn't say anything when it was still in your hands, did you, sir?
Like I say, I did not.
Instead, you set it aside.
Right, just like the other.
And then you
flip upside down and put aside.
And then, sir, you took photo number 4 and set it aside?
Well, after looking, of course.
5 and set it aside?
Just like the other.
6 and set it aside?
Just like the other.
Then you spent a couple minutes just thinking, trying to remember the photos you saw.
Well, no, I was not.
And so when I'm saying, you know, like, just like the others there, I'm just, it's again trying to slow him down. I think in later years I got a bit better at it, but like the worst thing you can do with an attorney who's on a roll like that is just go, yes, 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 yeah. Like, eat you alive.
Yeah, it's over.
Remember them.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually think an interesting strategy, like if let's say if I were coaching a team and Dan's crossing my kid, I think I probably would just tell him to lay down, honestly, because if I lay down, Dan doesn't get the I can't hear you moment, and Dan doesn't get the fun controls and the setups and stuff. If I just roll over, he's got to just do a script at that point. So, and if he's just doing a script, he's still going to be great because he's awesome. But your strength is reactivity in the moment. And
there's all
that's, I mean, that would have been in this final round. And I'm sure Toby and Ryan had a much better strategy than I would have had. But I think my thought would have been, whoever Dan is crossing, lay down. Lay down. Yes. Take your 8. Give him his 9. Don't give him his 10. Because if he gets a 10, you're probably gonna get a 6. So
I do think though, just like from my own experience, like I can get. My weakness is definitely that if a witness, for this witness specifically, like I just moved on and I try to basically just constantly be like taking the jury with me, with or without you. You know what I'm saying? But I would say that especially when I'm not prepared for it, like a big weakness of mine was I could just start arguing with the witness and chasing the witness down all these paths. Right. And I think that like, even if I'm being reactive and even if I'm catching them in loops or whatever, it just gets so muddled at a certain point and it uses so much time. Like Raymond was the master because he has to overcome the fact that I'm like taking all his time. Like if with a witness who acts like that, Raymond was the master of like the 3-minute cross that gets a 10, you know what I mean? Because I just took his time and it was completely unfair. So that could be effective too, but
it's bad for the witness too, because you take this character, right, that you just spent all of direct building up that you want people to remember you as, and then suddenly you're replacing that image with someone who argues about things, which is far less likable than, you know, this endearing guy trying to own a convenience store and raise his daughter.
Yeah, I think my strategy would have been, you don't want to argue with him, with one, for the credibility thing, but two, that he's going to shine. So give him complete sentences, but never disagree. So don't yes, no, no, but complete sentence him to death, Turkish accent him to death on cross, but no disagreements. Roll.
Yeah.
Like, don't let him show off.
And that was definitely, I think, my biggest weakness as a younger competitor. You have no idea how many times I got that comment from coaches. Dan, I'm pretty sure my coaches told me to say less when I was going against you in that round than I did.
I was making sure that I was making correct.
Yeah, because you preserve credibility for when you do disagree by doing that.
Without being able to look at photo number 3 again, isn't that true?
Right.
And it was only after all of that that you told the police you thought photo number 3 was of the person you saw. Isn't that true?
That's correct. This is the procedure.
Let's talk about why it might have taken that time. You didn't have names accompanying those photos, did you, sir?
Sorry?
You didn't have names of the people in the photos accompanying them, did you, sir?
I almost always end on case theory. I almost always do that. I mean, with there are a few exceptions, but like I almost always used to try to end on case theory, just to tie it back to what we were doing as a team.
So, for example, you don't know whether or not somebody named Alex Everett was in that photo stack, do you, sir?
No, I do not know Alex ever.
The police, they said
Just totally butchered the name.
a lot to you about Skylar Sinclair in the days since the identification, isn't that true?
I do not know what you mean.
Oh, well, the police, they've never once mentioned the name Alex Everett to you, have they?
Right, but they also did not say to me about Skylar Sinclair.
You've never seen a photograph of Alex Everett on the news in the days since you made this identification, have you?
No, the only photograph I see is the man who came into my store, the police officer.
And sir, the police, they've never called you back in to compare Skylar Sinclair to a girl named Alex Everett, have they?
The police never give me a name. I just tell them what I see, and I identify that she is the woman I saw who put on the mask.
So, Mr. Monsiger, to answer my question, they've never called you back in and asked you to compare Skylar Sinclair to somebody named Alex Everett, have they, sir?
No, the first time I'm hearing Skylar, this is today.
Thank you, Mr. Monsiger. Have a good night.
Redirect. You too, sir.
That was awesome. And I had Brandon Hughes on recently to watch his 2011 final. And the thing where in the Happy Land case where he's kind of running around the well and pretending to be Joey Davis, putting the beads in his mouth. And that's one of the things that competitors, current competitors, former competitors look at as one of like kind of the big moments in AMTA history. And this is definitely one of those handful of things that people talk about, this cross and that the tape measure thing specifically. How does it make you feel, Dan, that like this is the thing that people still talk about even 6 years later?
I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we like took it from a movie kind of, and I didn't even know. I don't remember how anybody came up with it, but I remember that people were talking about once we were practicing it. I've never seen my cousin Vinny. I still haven't. And people were saying that's like the moment is like that. And
right.
So yeah, super weird. I feel like in general, I wish that I think of this trial and I think of Pat's direct. That's I mean, really all our witnesses. I think of our team those 2 years, my junior and senior year, and I think of our witnesses. And I think Raymond and me and Sarah did our parts too, but I just think we won on the strength of our witness performances. And so I wish that this trial was remembered by Pat's direct personally, because I think that's like the most unique thing that I've ever been a part of.
Definitely. I have a couple of quick hitters for you guys before I let you go. And I'm not going to let you off easy on these. I need one answer, no multiple answers. No, I'm not sure. One answer for all of these. Dan, whenever I ask this question, I get your name a lot, so I'm interested to hear what your answer is going to be. So I'll start with you, and then we'll go to Deniz. Who's the best competitor of all time?
Oh my God. That I ever saw, Allison Durkin.
What about competitors that you didn't see? Is there a different answer?
No, I best of all time. I don't know, but best that I saw. I think Raymond and Allison are the best competitors I ever saw.
Deniz?
I'd have to go to the home team for this one too. I would say Ali Piacenti.
Wow, I thought you were going to say Ben Wallace.
I never saw him compete.
You've seen video.
I wanted to say somebody that I've at least been contemporaneous with.
What is the best round of mock trial that you ever saw, whether it be in person or on video?
Great question. My favorite rounds were probably our round. Wow. NYU. We played NYU, the round 4 of this tournament. It was great. We played who else? Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry.
Deniz?
That is a tough question. You were right. These are not easy hitters, but I'm going to go with the easy answer for me. This is a round I've been in. The final round, the year after this one. Going from losing to Yale to beating them the next year was the best feeling, and we worked towards that goal from the start. So it almost feels wrong calling that a round. It feels like a culmination of that year's effort.
We went against Rhodes in the national champ. We went against Rhodes in NCT. Like really all 4 years that I was there, we went against Rhodes. And then I would say the first one we weren't good enough to be competitive with them, but the next 3 years, and especially the second year, were all like incredible rounds. My sophomore, junior, and senior years.
So what are your guys' plans for the next couple of months? What do you guys have going on? Dan, Super Bowl just happened. So what's
oh man, don't remind me. Yeah, I mean, I guess we're trying to take the AFC North back from the Bengals. So
good luck with that.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had some of my time off the last. We get a couple weeks, kind of to just refresh, and because the season is such a grind for everybody involved, and it like you're all in all the time, like nonstop work, especially on the coaching side during the season, and then you get just a couple weeks to breathe and get yourself back, and now we're kind of back to work developing our systems on both sides of the ball and studying players and studying the league and preparing for the year and for our guys to come back. So,
Deniz, what's life like for you right now?
Well, Phil, what is life like for me right now? You know, I'm going to spend the next few months here doing my thing at the Thomas R. Klein School of Law, Drexel University. Here we are. I'm going to be crushing some classes. I don't know about that. I'm going to be taking some classes. Try to see what I'm doing over the summer, and I'm going to enjoy my last few months of this before I dive right back into the crazy with you.
And that's right, because Deniz has tryouts in just a couple of weeks for our mock trial team at the law school. I have a good feeling. We'll see how the tryout goes, but I have a good feeling about this guy. And how do you feel about getting back in there?
I feel good. I feel hungry. Honestly, I do. I miss it. It's funny, you do mock trial and it takes up a ton of time, and then you wonder, what am I going to do with all of this free time once I don't have mock trial anymore? Well, you spend a good amount of that missing mock trials. So I'm looking forward to being back in the mix. And I've heard from other people on this show, other friends of the show, how different and cool law school mock can be. So I'm excited to try this at a different level.
Well, thank you guys both so much for coming on. This was like I said at the beginning, a highly requested episode. And I think it lived up to the hype, and I'm really excited for people to see it.